living water. That's what he promised that day, living water. Shoot, I didn't know what he meant by it. I only knew that there was this priest or Jewish rabbi, someone important, sitting there by the marketplace, first asking me for water and then turning around later and telling me about living water. Something I'd never heard of before, this living water. You know, it had started out to be an ordinary day. Like, I just got up, an ordinary day, and met up with Jake, the ornery man. I'd learned to stay clear of Jake when he'd been out drinking the night before because his breath was soured just like his mood. I shuddered as I heard him close the refrigerator door, knowing that I'd hear, "Lazy good for nothing? Not enough food or even water in the house? Woman been laying around here again, just doing nothing. The fridge is empty again. Don't you go giving me that sob story about when you go down to the market, they look at you funny. People look at each other funny all the time. You listen here, woman. The fridge best be filled when I get home." You know, I didn't mind so much that Jake's anger. Did I deserve it? Woman's gotta take care of their house, right? Besides, his anger didn't cut me so deep as those looks by those women down there at the market. Their looks cut me in half, none of them inviting me to their little coffees and things that they have. Who does she think she is could be heard in their stares as they looked at me in silence. I'd take Jake's harsh words any day over that. Besides, a good thing about Jake is that once the fog of that wine cleared his head, he was almost a nice, compassionate guy. He would say he was sorry. You know, it's just that he has this thirst for something he doesn't even know. Anyways, like I'm saying, it started out like any other day, and Jake left to do whatever it is that men do, and I was feeling overwhelmed, so I took a cool cloth and just pressed it up against my dirty face. I then scrambled around trying to do as many chores as I could before it was time to go down to the market. I kind of have realized that most people go either in the morning or in the evening, but not so much at noon. So I was making my way down to the market there at noon, and when I do that, I kind of do this thing like fairy telling. Do you know what I mean? Where you tell that story to yourself about how things could be. Like, what if John, he was my first husband, what if he hadn't died? Maybe there is something to only the good die young. He'd have taken care of me. What if we'd had a son? I wouldn't be alone. He'd be walking by my side. I married James, hoping he would take care of me, but he didn't. He left me before we were married even 3 weeks for another woman. And then there was Josh. He seemed like a sweet man, so we lived together for a few days. And then he was off with another woman. And Henry was old as Methuselah. And he died. Henry was a good man, though. He was a good man. What if Jake and I could get married and we started our family, and then things were like good and normal, and we had some children that would be walking alongside of us? If I had that son, he'd stand tall and be athletic and be strong. He would have a thirst for the good things, but not a thirst for the bottle. My son would have a love of people, not a hatred for people like projected on me. Fairy telling. Those happy endings. Then I walked up to the market that day. And he was sitting there. And I approached him, and I could see right away he wasn't from these parts. He was a stranger. He looked like a wise teacher of sorts, and I expected him to be looking down his nose at me. You know, those of us that haven't been able to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, folks don't think much of us. So I looked at that man just sitting there, and I thought, he's one of them, just another one of them. He thinks he's better than me. He probably is judging me, poor, hurting woman. Just who does she think she is strutting down here by this upscale marketplace? But I didn't actually know what he was thinking. Instead of shooing me away, he said, "Ma'am, would you go into that store and buy me a bottle of water? Could you go just get a bottle of water for me? Here's the $1. It's easy to see, you know, just kind of pushing me around still, asking me to go get water for him. I said to him, "Why don't you just go get the water yourself?" I kind of felt like I had the upper hand here. Like, really? You can walk into that store. You know, when sometimes you just have that little edge about you, when you feel like somebody's talking to you, and you get all angry and bitter inside, and all of that venom that's been building up that you've been wanting to say to folks all these years, you just let them have it? I spewed some pretty nasty words to that man. "Excuse me, sir, do I look like your waitress?" And then I soon regretted my angry words that I had spat on him. All those words. He didn't get riled up. He didn't get angry. Instead, he told me strange things. Things about living water. Things about people quenching their thirst from that living water. And he asked me about Jake. Well, not really about Jake. He asked me about my past. And then he went on to tell me everything about my past that I really didn't want him to know. And the more he talked, I realized he was a prophet. He said a couple more things, and I got to thinking, could it be? Could he be the one? Could he be the one that everyone was talking about? Could it be him? I got so excited that I ran back directly to that little coffee shop where all those fashionista women were having their tea and coffee. And I said, you gotta come and see. You have to come and see. He told me all about my past. And he offered this thing called living water. They got up to go and see him, and I wasn't real sure if it was because they were inquisitive about my past and they just wanted to hear it, or if they actually were seeking something else. Well, I let them run on down to see this Jesus, and I ran home to tell Jake. Jake, I gotta tell you something. And I ran in the door and smack right into him. Jake, I have to tell you something. Woman, the refrigerator. I know, but I was down at the store. Woman, where's my water? Jake, I have to tell you something. It was the Messiah. He was there. There was living water. You have to go and meet him. You have to go, Jake. Jake grumbled and said some more words to me. But I said, Jake, come and see. Come and see. It had started out like any ordinary day, but it did not remain an ordinary day. That was the day when the man named Jesus was there, and he told me about the living water. He told me that it would quench my thirst. He told me that there was water enough for everyone. It was hard to understand his words, but my heart, it realized that that living water quenches something deep down inside. So come and see, come and meet Jesus, that living water.